The Eagles may be 3-3 and they may be tied for the divisional lead, but there is a new level of stress surrounding this team, particularly because the pass defense is doing anything but what it says on the tin. Through the opening 6 games of the season, they rank 30th in receptions against outside receivers, 32nd in yards, and 32nd in touchdowns. Kirk Cousins threw for 333 yards and 4 touchdowns against this secondary last week, and coming up is a tough divisional matchup, one where the winner will be at the top of the NFC East by themselves. It is imperative that the Eagles get themselves fixed up and suitably prepared for what promises to be an intense showdown in Jerry World. But much of the debate this week surrounding the Eagles defense has been, what is the issue? Is it a lack of talent, or is it a problem with the scheme? Something that may have to be addressed in the offseason, and this film room should hopefully at least bring us one step closer to finding an answer. So without further ado, buckle up, grab some popcorn. This is another episode of Eagles Film Room. As always, guys, before we get started, make sure you leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new to this channel and enjoy this sort of content. And don't forget to drop your comments down below on what you've seen today. Has it changed your mind? Have I missed anything? We encourage that discussion and we would love for you to be a part of this community. And as always, don't forget you can check out daily content from myself and all of our writers over at phillysportsnetwork.com. Now, the first thing we have to note here are the two polar opposites. The Eagles may have the best run defense in the NFL, but it's not without problem. Because there is such a heavy focus on these 8-man boxes and stopping opposing running backs, which they are doing so blissfully, they also rank at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to pass defense. And while Fletcher Cox and the Eagles front 7 held Dalvin Cook to just 41 yards, which is absolutely astonishing, Mike Zimmer had a game plan coming into this matchup, and he told reporters prior to the game the following. If they're going to take the free safety out of the middle, you have a chance to hit some real deep ones. And if they keep him back, you have a chance to hit some intermediate ones. That was the game plan from the get-go. They knew the Eagles would stack the box, put an 8th man in there, and try to contain Dalvin Cook. And they wanted to put the onus all on that lone free safety to dictate the fate of the play. Would it be a deep shot? Would it be a check down underneath? It all comes down to the secondary, and what I think is honestly a disconnect between the secondary and the linebackers. We'll get into that in due course, but this play is the first one I want to look at. It's the first Stephon Diggs touchdown. The Eagles are in quarters coverage, as you can see, and essentially that means that all of those defensive backs highlighted are responsible for a quarter of the field. It's also called cover 4, and the Vikings are going to run what's called a Yankee concept. It's something that stems from the Shanahan days, and it's become very successful against aggressive play calls, or something where that safety plays closer to the line of scrimmage. And when watching the Eagles cornerbacks on TV, it's easy to see them being burned alive or toasted, or however you want to word it. Trading for a star cornerback will not help this team because it comes down to communication. What we're going to see here is an example of when everyone pounds the table saying the Eagles need safety help. They need help over the middle, especially to stop those crosses. This is what we're talking about. Rasul Douglas shades his body outside and Rodney McLeod drops down to pick up the crossing route from Adam Thielen, but Malcolm Jenkins already has it covered. So one of them has to drop back. They have to help Douglas and give him that support that he needs because he's already shaded himself outside. The help doesn't come and Diggs goes striding into the end zone because the safeties weren't aligned, they weren't communicating, they didn't know who was going to come down on that crosser, and they both did it. Here it's a 2-score game, the Vikings looking to add insult to injury, and the Eagles are going to run a version of their cover 3. Remember in other film rooms where I've spoke about kind of moving safeties around and changing responsibilities? The Vikings did their homework, they knew how to combat this. The Eagles have an 8-man box, and Adam Thielen is going to orbit his way around. Sidney Jones will take Rodney McLeod's spot, and McLeod will follow Thielen all the way around the formation. The second that happens though, you've now got a slower outside cornerback with no safety help playing outside leverage, and again it's an easy shot for Kirk Cousins who just overthrows it. The Eagles get away with one. What plagued the Eagles 2 weeks ago suddenly isn't, it's now the inverse effect. Here's a cover 0 blitz. We know it's a blitz because the safety drops down. That tells us that again you've got a stacked box. Minnesota are going to run one of my favourite plays, which is double China 7. 2 in breaking routes and a slot corner depending on who's tight to the numbers. This time, it's going to come from Adam Thielen. And if you look at the spacing between the cornerbacks, the Vikings have to lick their lips. You've got 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. So the second they break, the corners come down and there is a wide open space. Thielen pulls away from Jenkins, who makes a great recovery play. But this bleeding could have been so much worse. The Eagles were lucky to get away with the score they did. Again, 8-man front. How do you attack a defense that is so committed to the run? The Eagles are running cover 3. But what happens is that flow of traffic is so strong, they move Kyle Rudolph to the other side of the formation. They're all expecting run. Even Rasul Douglas, who again shades his body outside. By this point, you've got 3 receivers all wide open because the linebackers underneath have flowed so heavily in favour of Dalvin Cook. They haven't bothered to pull back. They can't retrace in time, and that's a touchdown. No help over or under the middle in that case. And this is what concerns me. Forget the touchdowns, forget everything else. This game was 1 week ago. This was Minnesota versus the New York Giants. And all of the following plays came in the first half. There are about 7 in total. All play action, all of them completions, all of them move the chains. You did see this on tape. It happened against Oakland. It happened against Chicago. Minnesota have made this a bread and butter of their offense because they know the effect that Dalvin Cook has. And if you can drag linebackers down, people like Nate Jerry, who are more reactive than instinctive, what you get is a massive wide open space over the middle, and it puts the onus again all on the safeties and the corners. So that's what I'm talking about with the disconnect. I'll get into it a bit more later. But I wanted to draw your attention to this. A lot of people saying the Eagles don't have the talent or they don't have the cornerbacks, they need help. This one, fair enough, but I wanted to draw your attention to Rasul Douglas on the other side of the field. Sidney Jones should be looking at the receiver. He didn't move, his feet were stuck in the mud, and by the time he turns around, Thielen is already gone. It's a touchdown. That shouldn't happen. Let's contrast this then to Rasul Douglas, who's covering the exact same route against Stephon Diggs. Notice the leverage. He wants Diggs to go outside. So Rasul opens his hips one way. He forces Diggs to go outside. And look at this. He's just angling himself all the way. So he's not closing in. He's not biting. He's patient. He's conservative. That's how you defend a breaking route in the end zone. You don't sit back, let it come to you and react. You be instinctive with it and you force the corner where you want him to go. Now, another argument we see with this secondary is, well, the pass rush isn't doing anything. What can the pass rush do when the ball is coming out that quickly? The cornerback is 10 yards off. And if you don't believe me, watch the timer on the screen right now. Ball comes out within 1.7 seconds. That's almost a first down. So if it's not a play action, that's what we're looking at. You've then got instances like this where the Eagles just get bullied. It's a bit lackadaisical. Rasul Douglas comes up against the tight end, bullied his way off the line, and then the tight end makes a reception. Saul brings him down short of the goal line. But still, it's just the Vikings picking their way down the field, and Schwartz did nothing to give help to players that so direly needed it. Look at this again. It's another example of the Vikings flooding that right side. The Eagles are stacking the box. They're expecting a Dalvin Cook run. Everyone's angled to the weak side of the field, and we're going to see zone coverage. So you've got Nate Gary, who's going to come out on a curl and flat read, but they all come down so hard that by the time those linebackers, T.J. Edwards, number 57, another one, pull away, that there's no leverage there. The safety here actually picks up what he's meant to do the other 6 plays we've looked at, and that allows Douglas in a cover 3 to come back down. But the problem is there's now no help underneath because the linebackers are so distracted by Dalvin Cook. So it's the same thing over and over again. Minnesota just punishing the Eagles, and the worst part is the Dallas Cowboys are going to expect the same. It happened with Darius Guys. It's happened with every running back so far. Le'Veon Bell, you're going to see it again. The Eagles are going to stack the box. The Vikings have flooded the concept. You can see here another version of that Yankee concept that we spoke about earlier on. Play action, Cousins rolls out. Where is that ball going? It is so obvious. The safety has then got to make a read, and look at how far he has to come down just to try and make a stop. It's abysmal. It's on the coaching staff for not putting players in a position to do better. And the worst part is, it works. If you look here, Malcolm Jenkins outside of the box. It's a cover 2 against the run. It stopped. It can be done. They're not oh, it's because of our personnel. We have to stay in cover 3 and cover 0. Not at all. It's all choice. There's another example. 2 safeties here. The Eagles are going to run a very similar look. They give up a slightly bigger gain, but you look at the flow of traffic and the linebackers that can pursue the middle of the field if there were to be any in-breaking routes. Talking of linebackers, what happens when you actually just sit them in zone instead of pressing them to the line to fake blitz for some reason? You still stack the box. You've still got the presence there, but what they're going to do is take take over curl and flat responsibilities, which allow the corners in a cover 3 to drop back. And look at the difference it makes. Cousins has nowhere to go because there are linebackers all across the middle of the field. There is a fundamental divide in the Eagles secondary right now, and I don't think a star cornerback helps it. I don't think anything helps it other than Jim Schwartz. He's got to put his players in a better position to make plays. He's got to give the cornerbacks safety help reliably over the middle, and they have to know right now that the blueprint to beat this defense has been out there for 3 years. It is 10 yards off the ball. It's not hard to throw underneath. It's not hard to abuse an 8-man box, and we're seeing it over and over again. The Eagles are responsible for playing 8-man boxes pretty much every game this season, and there was a point in that game against Minnesota where Stefanski moved that Minnesota offense down the field to seal the game. They had 2 drives that went for 75 yards and 85 yards. Not a single third down was experienced, and that is what has to change. This is unbelievably shoddy by the Eagles coaching staff, and it simply has to change. It has to develop. Otherwise, the season, regardless of how good the offense plays or how good Deshaun Jackson is when he's back, is at a loss. But I hope this video has been informative, guys. If you liked it, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter at Jenkins PSN. I'll see you soon.